Hello, Polly. I want to welcome you back to Seniors Can We Talk? Polly and I are here today, and we want you to grab your favorite beverage and pull a chair up to the table because we're going to have a great conversation today. Polly is the owner of Thrive After 65.com, and she is the Tiny Habits coach.
And Linda has a podcast called Aging in Place Strategies. And she also is the author of Aging in Place Roadmap, which I think is
Yes.
an interesting topic. I'm I'm looking forward to learning more about that as it comes along.
Well, it is a work in progress. So I will just let our listeners know that it is a work in progress, but it really fits in perfectly with our topic today because we're going to be talking about decisions. And Polly's been out traveling, and I have had my nose to the grindstone. Like I've been working hard, doing a variety of things, some of it fun. But where have you been, Polly, since we've been with our listeners?
Well, I am so blessed. I have a daughter who shares her success with me, and she had the opportunity to go to a conference of what would you say, a chamber music conference in southern France. And she took me along with her, and I had the most wonderful time. And then I came back to New York, spent a couple of days in New York, and then I went up to Boston, where I met another dear friend from California who invited me to come with her to the grand opening of Mel Robbins' in-person tour through the United States. And she just finished writing a book called The Let Them Theory. And I've been following her for a long time. So I got to see her in person. So it was a long haul because I think I was away for 2.5 weeks. My poor kitty missed me so much. But
I
now I'm
bet.
now I'm back home.
Now she's back home, but what a fun thing. I don't know if our listeners remember, but that's why you were really keen on your exercise program because you wanted to be able to do all of that. And I know that the listeners don't know this, but I'm going to share that Polly was riding around in a convertible and just having the time of her lives
Yeah.
with some friends that
I
they
have
know.
an adopted French son. Uh, our families exchanged our children through a school program, and we've been visiting each other over the past 43 years ever since. And my French son took me for a ride in a fire engine red Porsche convertible through the hills near in southern France. It was the highlight of the trip. It was so much fun.
Which I love because some of you don't know that Polly's 82. So, like, she's not sitting on the couch knitting or letting the grass grow under her feet. She is out and about and enjoying life. And like she said, it's so wonderful to have friends that are doing fun things and then inviting you along to enjoy with it. So it's a good reason to stay on our exercise plan and watch over
Yeah.
our health so that we can do
You know,
that.
I have to share this with you, Linda. This is
Sure.
the most interesting thing. You know, you look at our kids and they're saying to themselves, "Oh, I'm turning 40," or "Oh, I'm turning 50." And at this conference, almost everybody was over the age of 75 because they have
Interesting.
the time and the ability to travel and to play the violin or the viola or the cello or whatever. And we were at a cocktail party on the opening day of this conference, and I mentioned, "Well, I'm 82," and somebody said, "Well, I'm 87," and then somebody else said, "Well, I'm 91."
Oh my
And it's
goodness.
like everybody is proud of this accomplishment because, you know, sometimes we get to feeling sorry for ourselves and we all have our little ailments and aches and pains. But I just thought that was such a neat sort of thing that actually, when you get to this age, you're bragging.
And you should, because it is, something to be thankful for. And the fact that you can do it is another thing. Our grandson is learning the violin. And I told him, I said, music is something you can enjoy all your life. And so now you see people advanced ages still loving their music and being able to do it. That's super cool. What was I doing in May? Let's see, working on my podcast, working for my other part-time job. But I did sneak a few hours away to the Lake of the Ozarks, which is big in Missouri, and had some great family time. And where we were staying had a really beautiful outdoor porch so that we could spend some time relaxing. And of course, I like to read. So anytime I get to do that, I feel like I'm out of my lane and having a really, really good time just relaxing. But you told me, you said, Linda, I'm going to go see Mel Robbins. And normally I'd be like, what? I don't even know who that is, what's going on. But I just happened to catch a podcast myself where Mel Robbins was being interviewed, and she was talking about the let them theory. And then I mentioned that to some friends of mine that I meet with on a regular basis. And they said, oh, yes, I am well aware of Mel Robbins' new book, The Let Them Theory. And so then we were able to have a conversation about how it related to the topics that we cover in our small group. But this is a pretty big deal because, we're talking about decisions today and then Mel Robbins' book. So, Polly, let's get this kicked off and started and figure out where we're going today with this let them theory. What's the let them and let me? Can you share what that
Yes, so
means?
the let them theory, and that's whatever catches everybody's eye. And a simple example would be you're waiting at the airport and you've gotten off the plane and you're waiting for your baggage, and the baggage, it's taking forever. And you have two choices. You can just say, well, let it happen. And the baggage is late. Getting all upset and angry about it doesn't change anything. The same thing is with people, sometimes people don't behave the way we think they should, especially our children. They're not doing everything exactly the way we used to do it. And what Mel Robbins would say, just let them. It's getting upset and trying to control it. All it does is make us miserable. But
Right.
there's another piece to this. It's not just about letting go and letting them. I always think of what was that Disney film? Let it go,
Oh,
let
yes,
it go.
Frozen. Frozen.
Frozen. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let it go. No. What there's a corollary to this, and it's not only let it go, but let me. And I think if you boil it down to the simplest concept, it is let other people be who they are, but let me take responsibility for what I want to do and what I need to do to take care of myself and my own feelings and my own situation. So it's a two-part thing. It's not just let it go, but it's let it go, but let me make a decision that's right for me. I don't have to go along with this. I can make a different decision, make a different choice.
You
And I
know,
think that's what's, how would I say, it's really sort of a mindset thing.
yeah, and I think I was just thinking about when you were talking about when you're in the trenches of working, when you're working for somebody else and they're calling the shots, or when you're raising a family, you don't always, you're on a track where you have to accomplish things and you're being told what you need to accomplish. And then all of a sudden you get into your retirement and you're like, let me do what? Are you telling me now that I'm in the driver's seat and that I have some part in this? But I'm used to being told things and I'm used to having things happen and me reacting to things. So knowing that I can let somebody else do what they're supposed to do, but then take responsibility for my actions might be kind of a new thought, a new way of living, which is kind of odd. But I'm just wondering if somebody feels like me in this and kind of newly retired, that now it's up to me. Now I get to talk about my second chapter, my third chapter. I had 17 years as a stay-at-home mom. That was my first that was my
So did
first
I.
career.
Mhm.
And then my second career is working. And now my third career is figuring out my third chapter, actually, my third career. And I get to make those decisions.
Mhm.
And that can be overwhelming, but they're my decisions to make. Okay.
Mhm.
Not to mention that I'm still not a mom, that I'm still not a wife, that I'm still not an employee. But this might open this playing field into a whole different thought process,
I
right?
think that when we retire, we tend to how would I say? Well, society, the ways that, and
Okay.
we unconsciously absorb society's expectations. And we tend to become sort of passive. That just, well, it's just old age, or this is just the way it has to be. And we sort of abdicate our own power for decision making. I'm going to give you a quick example. Um,
Okay.
and I think for me, usually the sign that I'm not making a decision or taking responsibility for what I really want in my life is I get grumpy and sad.
Okay.
So a couple of years ago, I noticed that I was feeling grumpy and sad. And the occasion was, it was springtime. And it was coming up on a special holiday in my family, which was Easter. Now,
Okay.
I am a preacher's kid. My mom was born in the Ukraine and brought up in the Catholic Church. I got to tell you, when we had Easter, it was bigger than Christmas because my mom got out the lavender candles and the special tablecloth, and she made my dad dress the special Easter bread. And my dad, who usually never wore special garments for the church service, got all decorated up, and all the altar guild ladies were so happy because he put on the cope and all these special things. And we had, members of the Baltimore Symphony play Hallelujah and all this kind of stuff. And now here it is, 70 odd years later. And my kids, who I all raised to be independent thinkers, I raised them to be that way. They all have their own independent ways of spirituality.
Right.
But sometimes the old me looks on them as they're a bunch of heathens because
Sorry,
they're not
kids.
doing everything the way we used to. So this is what was going on. Instead of the big Easter dinner and Easter bread and all this kind of stuff, there was one particular year where one of the kids, they just had like a cocktail party. It was like a brunch, but I mean, it was just everybody standing around. It was just so far from, and I realized I was grumpy because it wasn't the way I liked it to be. It reminded me of how far I've come from the kind of Easters when I was growing up.
Yes.
And that was the first step as I got myself conscious about what was making me grumpy. And I made a new decision. Instead of weeping and wailing that things just aren't the same, I made a new decision. That was the holiday that I really cared about. And so I informed my kids the next year, about a month in advance, I'm going to do Easter. Now, it's not going to be the same Easter that I had when I was growing up,
Right.
but we're going to have Easter bread. We're going to have a ham. We're going to have, oh, what is it? The green bean and onion
Oh, yes.
casserole.
Yes, the green bean casserole.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Easter flowers. And I recruited a friend of mine who also loves to cook. We set up the menu, and I don't have a big dining room in my apartment, but we just did it buffet style. And I was so happy. But I
Yes.
had to first recognize how I say, what was causing me to feel sad and grumpy, and take responsibility for it, that things weren't the way they used to be, and then make a new decision. And that's where I think so much empowerment can come for us as older adults, is recognizing our part in the emotions that we're feeling and making a decision to take action instead of dwelling on how unhappy and how things aren't the same anymore.
Right. And then if you don't really like the flow, then you can change it. I mean, you've got that privilege and you've got that experience. So when you changed it up, it was actually something new, and then you let people know that you were having an Easter event, and if they wanted to come, they could, and if they didn't want to come, that was totally okay, right?
Yeah. And
Because we're
like you were
let
talking to me, you were mentioning Charles Swindoll. So much of the whole aging thing is in how we approach it. What was he saying?
so a while ago, when I was listening to the radio, Chuck Swindoll, he said that he had a book, and it was called Life is 10% What Happens to You, and about 90% about the way you react. And I thought, that's absolutely the truth is that my reactions to any particular situation can cause conflict. They can cause me to feel grumpy and sad and emotional and sometimes irrational, right?
Mhm.
And so when I realized that 90% that was on me. That wasn't on anybody else. That was on me to take in and figure that out and sift through that, okay? And how I wanted to react to that particular situation. So when I was looking up that particular book to put it in my cart in Amazon, I saw a quote from Charles Swindoll that he said about this. He said, "The longer I live," so Chuck is one of us. He's an older guy too, and he says, "The more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude is the impact on life." He says, "Attitude to me is more important than the facts. It's more important than the past. It's more important than education. It's more important than money, circumstances, successes." And I think this is so important, is than what other people think, say, or do. And I think that's the let them theory, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I can't imagine. I can't imagine the energy that it takes to control, try to think that I can control somebody else. Can you imagine that energy level that it takes to even think I can control the situation or control somebody else? But what I know I
Well, we
can,
sure spend a lot of time trying.
we sure do. We sure do. But I'd rather spend that time on me,
Right.
being selfish the way I am, the way I am. So, are there some ways, Polly, that you can help us after being at this big gala and being at this big conference where this is the start of her tour, that we can then begin to release control over other people's actions or things that are going on? So
Okay.
you said a couple of things. What did Mel Robbins say?
Well, just to go back to the beginning, her whole theory is let people be who they are, let them do what they're going to do. In most cases, our concerns are about people and other people's behavior, but it could be about circumstances, just accepting reality and so on and so forth. Let it be what it is, but let me redecide what I want to do instead of just feeling angry or upset or grumpy or sad, negative emotions about or angry about what they should be doing.
Right?
And sadly, there's so many people I know who are spending a lot of time just what they should be doing instead of focusing on what's possible and what things they can do themselves. So I'm a tiny habits coach. And in many ways, if we take the let them theory, we could apply it to creating emotional detachment from other people who we think should be doing things differently, or setting
Boundaries.
boundaries. Yes,
Boundaries.
or accepting reality. But with tiny habits, what we try to do is go back to the very, very, very beginning of any particular process. We go back to the links and find what is the tiniest thing that we can do. We can't all necessarily take a weekend retreat learning about emotional detachment,
Right.
setting boundaries, and accepting realities. But there is one thing we can do, and that is to accept responsibility for our feelings and to make a new decision.
Okay.
That's the one thing we can, and that is the starting place. If we accept responsibility and are willing to make new decisions, everything else is going to fall into place. We don't have to take a weekend workshop on boundaries. That's the starting place. Does that make sense to you?
It does, but it is hard because obviously I would much prefer that the situation would change. I would much prefer that other people change. But what I have learned in this process of trying to let people do what they're going to do and me figure out my response is that it's just it just feels better to me because I'm just not living under something. I am doing
Yeah, you
something
don't feel trapped.
proactively. Yeah,
Yeah, you don't feel trapped, and you realize you have options. And sometimes we just
absolutely.
sort of forget we do have more options than we think we do.
Absolutely. So
And you were
I
telling me
acknowledge
about a
that part.
work situation, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I acknowledge that this is not easy to do. Let's just say that, Polly's 82, I'm 68. So we've had some life experience here and not everything's been hunky dory, and peachy keen in our lives as well as our listeners' lives. We know that you get to a new spot, but knowing that we still want to move forward in our thinking. So uh, often and frequently, this happens to other people as well. There's a work decision that's made beyond your scope. Like I didn't get to be a part of the work decision; it was just a decision that was made, and
So you're talking about a specific incident that happened to you,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
and you
So
had to make a choice.
yeah, it was a work decision that was made. And then I was told about the work decision. It didn't even come to me through the direct line. It just came sort of roundabout. So I did have some feelings and emotions about the way that was handled, but also about the work decision. And the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? That's okay. This was the work decision at the top. It filtered down to me, and then I realized this is kind of awesome. It's actually freeing. So I was kind of then thankful once I sifted this whole thing through that it was actually freeing and pulled a lot of responsibility off me so then I could focus on my particular tasks, because sometimes in a smaller company you might focus on other tasks as assigned, those other things that are in your job description and other tasks that could be assigned to you. So it's actually freeing in that way. But I thought, well, this is great because now they made their decision. Now I can make my decision. Do I like it? Do I hate it? Can I live with it? And it allowed me to make other decisions moving forward about what I wanted to do. So I'm,
Instead of feeling stuck and miserable.
yeah, yeah, which, you know, fine. But I could have reacted and didn't. But I think just knowing that I had the ability to then make a decision for myself, and that was freeing. It just helped me to move beyond just the facts of the situation, which I don't want to go into, but it actually
Yeah.
relieved me of additional tasks, which was freeing. But I like some of those tasks, but it relieved me of that responsibility. And in actuality, then I could choose how I wanted to react to it and just focus on what was the most important and what was most important for the company, but what was most important for me. And that's really freeing. So I have chosen to apply that theory to other things. So when I get in a grumpy, stewy, irrational feeling that, oh gosh, this isn't going the way I thought it would go, or I'm not really liking the way it's headed, then I can choose how I want to react to all of that and decide it's not important to me, or that doesn't feel good. So I'm going to kind of create a boundary around that. But that will help me detach a little bit emotionally from that situation. And then just accepting it for what it is. It's okay.
And I think you've had some thoughts about just from a legal from because you're definitely the expert on the legal and the how would I say the practical aspects of all of this.
Well, absolutely. So, taking this personally is one thing. Okay. So, letting situations be as they are. All right. But then also letting me react appropriately. But I think it's also important that as seniors and as we begin to age, people feel like they have to make decisions for us. Right. Okay. So
Well meant
that's what I'm saying.
sometimes.
We might have well intended, very loving, kind adult children or friends who want to give us their opinions or their values or help us with our decision making. And I just want to be clear that legally there is a term that is called self determination. And so, because we're talking about decision making today, I want you to understand as a senior that it is actually your legal right to determine how and where you would like to live, how you would like to age, where how you want to live your life. You have the legal right to make decisions, retain control, even as you might and I might face potential declines physically or even potentially cognitively. This concept of self determination allows you to maintain your personal autonomy and your power, so that regardless of your age and circumstances, and that applies not only to how you want to live your life, where you want to live it, but also financial decision making, health decisions, and also in your legal rights. And this is what I learned when I made my decision, okay, of how I wanted to react to that work decision, is that when I took control over that, I realized that I retained my quality of life, and it helped me to feel good about what I was doing and how my response was to that. And if that didn't go well for somebody else, well then they had to let them. They had to use the let them
Yeah,
theory,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I think, that's the whole point of today's coffee talk or chit chat is the fact that, you know, as older adults, society tends to portray us as passive
Yes.
and victims.
Yes.
Oh, you're old and blah, blah, blah. And they tend to feel sad for us. And whenever you go to a doctor's office, people always say, "Oh, honey, it's going to be okay. Okay, sweetie."
Ugh.
And
The
I
Dr.
realize
Sweetie.
they're just trying to honor our age. But we're not victims, and I think it's just important that's the whole point of our talk today is just to remember that we are in control of our destiny, but we have to take the responsibility to be willing to make a decision about whatever it is that's coming up in front of us in our lives. And that we also have the ability to make decisions about our emotional and mental happiness too.
Absolutely, you
So,
do.
as a tiny habits coach, we don't want to leave you just dangling here and just saying, well, you have to make decisions. I created a tiny habit for anybody who is feeling a little bit put out because things aren't quite the way they think they should be. And it is based on what we talked about, the whole let them theory and let me take responsibility. And here is the tiny habit.
Okay, are
And
you
it is
ready,
this.
people? Here it
Yes.
comes. Here it
Here
comes.
comes the tiny habit. When I feel sad or grumpy, I will stop and ask myself, what is making me unhappy and what do I really want?
Yes.
And celebrate that I made that decision.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't control it and you want to control it, it's I think it's just like it's
It's
like
a recipe for feeling
it
sad and
really is.
grumpy,
I think
frustrated
about
the
the
rest of
old
your life.
washboard. Do you remember our moms with the washboard? Get your washboard out. And it's just, this is the way it is. You've got the situation, and here you are, and here's a washboard, and you're like, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." And really, honestly, it's not gonna go well. And so either you get stuck or you move on. And you know Polly and I well enough that we're not trying to stay stuck. We're trying to move on. And so we're just giving you the benefit of our experience and knowledge. And guess what? We're just working at it every day too. So don't think that we have arrived and that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
only telling you that this is going to work in every situation. But the tiny habit is when you got those emotions going through your head, do you want to spend all your day working on the same situation? Or do you want to let them do what they're going to do and then you get to make a decision about yourself and how you want to react to this and then you can move on? Like I always
So
say, I don't want to.
the uh, the tiny habit for this session is when I feel sad or grumpy, I will stop and ask myself, what is making me unhappy and what do I really want? Because that is the first step to making the decision and taking some action instead of being a victim.
Absolutely. We want to thank you for being with us today on Seniors Can We Talk. And if you would like to book Polly and myself for your senior group or for a senior marketing event at a community, we would love for you to reach out to us at thrive-65 dot
After 65.
after
Thrive after
65
65.
thriveafter65.com or Linda at seniorsupportstrategies.com. And don't worry if we messed it up. It's going to be in the video, so you'll be
Oh,
have a
good.
chance to catch that
Okay.
up. Hey, Polly, have a great rest of the month. It's great seeing you.
Great to see you too, Linda, and great to see everybody else by way of YouTube.
Amen on that.
Are you interested in learning more about tiny habits? Look for Polly Lemire at thrive-after65.com. You can learn more about aging in place, strategies, and answers by looking for my podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.